Vice President-elect Kamala Harris officially resigned from her California Senate seat this afternoon. It is the final step before she makes history as the first woman and woman of color to be sworn into the second highest office in the country. And she'll be sworn in by Sonia Sotomayor, the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice. Harris herself is used to breaking barriers. Of course, she's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, the first black Greek sorority founded over 100 years ago on Howard University's campus.
Let's clear something up. What happened to the HBCU money?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. HBCUs generally get about $650 million a year from the federal government.
$650 million, okay.
We put in our 2022 budget $887 million for HBCUs. So we brought them up by about $240 million. But just this year, we've given HBCUs $4.2 billion.
So HBCUs got that this year, $4.2 billion.
$4.2 billion.
Ain't nobody gonna get on Twitter and say you lying, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I will. Because they got $4.2 billion from us, and then they got another $500 million from the Department of Education. So it's really $4.7 billion.
Okay.
And
that's a flex.
And in Build Back Better, they're going to get more money, and it'll start with a B and not an M. So we know how important HBCUs are.
These people are masters at word play. HBCUs did not receive $4.7 billion in 2021. I guarantee you will not be able to find anything that supports HBCUs specifically getting $4.7 billion in 2021. So I'm not going to go to Twitter and say that he's lying. I'm simply going to say nothing supports what he's saying on Instagram. The House Education Committee crafted a sprawling bill that makes good on key tenets of Biden's $3.5 trillion spending plan, including universal community college and universal preschool. The bill would cover 2 years of tuition for many students attending historically black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, and other minority-serving institutions. I need you all to pay attention. Yet, lawmakers dial back funding for those schools designed to better serve students. Biden proposed a total of $55 billion for HBCUs and MSIs to upgrade research infrastructures and create up to 200 research incubators to bolster STEM education. House Democrats, however, are only setting aside $2 billion in grant funding that higher education leaders say would place many HBCUs at a disadvantage. When you see terms like tribal colleges and other minority-serving institutions, that is a nice way of saying non-black. That means the funding will not go specifically to black colleges and universities, but it will be divvied up among tribal colleges and other minority-serving institutions.
President Biden's $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill has been under attack from the jump. But lately, Biden's Build Back Better agenda is getting friendly fire from members of his own party. Case in point, Congresswoman Alma Adams of North Carolina has made it abundantly clear she plans to vote against Biden's $3.5 trillion plan because her colleagues in Congress will not fully fund historically black colleges and universities. Here's how it went down. President Biden proposed $55 billion in funding for HBCUs during the big reveal of the American Jobs Plan. Well, the full budget request then goes to Congress to reconcile the request with Congress's choices. Now, Congress, which is in control of the Democrats, decides to only allocate a total of $30.5 billion.
A very small handful of black congressmen and women were upset with the fact that in Biden's Build Back Better Act, HBCUs would not only get a lower amount of federal funding than what they previously expected, but they would now also have to compete for this small amount of funding against Hispanic-serving institutions and tribal colleges and universities. Not only that, but the way in which the law was written, according to Representative Alma Adams per this article, it is accurate to say that HBCUs will only successfully compete for pennies on the dollar, Adams wrote, adding that while she appreciates the intention of allowing colleges and universities with smaller research capacities to jumpstart their efforts, the legislation would actually inhibit R2 HBCUs from becoming R1 institutions by deprioritizing their grant applications. Now, if that doesn't upset you, this definitely will.
When Congressman Sam Adams and Senator Raphael Warnock saw that nearly $30 billion for HBCUs had just disappeared, they wrote to their colleagues on the education committees asking for a compromise number, essentially saying, okay, fine, just give back $15 billion of what you promised and we're good. Well, no deal.
So let me get this straight. You all did all that hooting and hollering to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into office. And when the moment comes for you all to get some money, the Democrats say no? Wait a minute. You mean to tell me the one time it comes for you all to get some money and the Democrats say no?
Well, Rodrigo, let's stay with you for just a moment, because why is it so politically easy for Democrats to be the ones to compromise on these numbers when, you know, their own party leader and the president asked for more?
Well, that's a really hard question to answer. And I'm hopeful that everyone has the right intentions. All I can say is that Congresswoman Alma Adams of North Carolina has proven to be our champion. She's our heroine. And we appreciate her because she's willing to stake the most precious thing a member of Congress has, her vote. She's willing to stake her vote on these institutions. We call them national treasures. We think they're landmark institutions. She's willing to stand up for them. And I think that she has some company in the Congress and in the House, where there's only a 3 or 4 vote majority by Democrats. Every vote is precious. And Congresswoman Adams staking her vote on how HBCUs are treated in reconciliation is something that really hasn't been done before. And it could really change the game as they begin to whip the votes for this bill.
There are more than 800 colleges and universities considered minority serving because of their history, control, or student body, according to the Education Department. Many have smaller endowments and institutional resources than their peers, but some are large public institutions with teams of dedicated grant writers, a luxury that few HBCUs can afford, said Murray of UNCF. Today, there are 107 HBCUs with more than 228,000 students enrolled. 56 institutions are under private control, and 51 are public colleges and universities. The public institutions account for more than 2/3 of the students in historically Black institutions. So this means out of the 800 colleges and universities considered minority serving, only 13% of them are actually HBCUs, which would explain why the HBCUs are lacking funding, because when the money is allocated, the majority of the money is not going to that 13%. Again, when you see terms like minority serving or people of color or minorities, those terms are nice ways of saying non-Black, non-Indigenous, non-melanated, non-African American. They use the image of HBCUs to get the funding, but the funding doesn't actually go to HBCUs.